knows when you come out my way. That's why my field stays packed on Fridays. We hunting, fishing, good living, just soaking up every country second we're giving. Yeah, we a long way away from the highway, so go ahead, y'all, you can get sideways.
It's the Old Boots Podcast with Justin Kelly and Laura Starling, and special guest today, Frank Malloy.
Yeah, it's fitting right into the Old Boots category, so I feel right at home with that.
Old Boots.
We are glad to have you, Mr. Frank.
Oh, Justin, it's great to be here. My gosh, all the high school football games I've covered here at Jones County High, never have I been in the 50. Well, maybe when I covered the coin toss, but
maybe you were on the 50-yard line.
Yeah, I was 50-yard line there, but usually they always made sure I was, and definitely in my career, I was always on the sidelines athletically. So
you didn't play football as a youngster?
No, I didn't. All right, so I always grew up and I loved sports, but I was a horrible athlete. I was afraid of the baseball. I didn't want to get tackled in football. I couldn't jump high in basketball, so it pretty much ruled everything out. So early on in my career, I knew if I was going to have anything to do with athletics, it would have to be as an announcer or broadcaster because, no, the athletic genes just weren't there.
What did you do in high school?
High school, I was pretty much a shy, nerdy guy. I went to an all-boys Catholic high school in Birmingham, Michigan, called Brother Rice High School, because entirely growing up and everything like that, my mom, we were always going to go to Catholic school. So when I was a freshman in high school, we were living in Philadelphia, which is where I was born. We moved to Detroit. So it was an all-boys Catholic high school, about 900 kids, and the girls' school was right across the street. And I was just really shy. I mean, I would not speak very much, kind of kept to myself. But I did do some things, like I was the manager for the basketball team and the statistician. And I did that my senior year, too. And I also was like the public address announcer for the basketball team.
Okay.
So you were doing the broadcasting pretty early on.
Yes, I did. I really enjoyed it. Yes, my voice was... of course, I guess if you really want to go back, my mom would want me to say that my broadcasting career started in the church because I did the readings in church. I was like the lector growing up. Like when I was in school, I would be the one they would always tap to do the readings. So, and they always said, you have a I don't know if they said a good voice, but said, you have a loud voice. And so I did that, and then that kind of transitioned into broadcasting, the starting lineups and whoever scored the baskets in high school, and from there. So,
and from high school. Where then? High
school. Well, then I went to Penn State because when I was a senior in high school, my parents moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so once I graduated from high school, I moved over there and went to Penn State for 2 years at one of the coldest places in the world, State College, Pennsylvania, just brutally cold. But I had grown up in cold, so I didn't know it at the time. But now I realize, wow, that was cold. The wind would howl. It was in the mountains. And went there for 2 years and did fine, but mainly it was just like I wrote for like the school newspaper, but no real broadcasting. Then after my sophomore year, my parents moved to Atlanta. The only Malloys that ever moved south. The rest of them are still up and around the Philadelphia area and in Pennsylvania. But my mom's mom was living in Orlando, and her health she was getting older. My mom wanted to be closer. So when my dad had a chance, he moved to Atlanta, which was, only about 5.5 to 6 hours from Orlando. So then I had the option of either staying at Penn State or moving with them. And I decided to take the plunge and went with them and applied to the University of Florida. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and the University of Georgia, because both had good broadcast schools. Florida's at that time was a little bit better. And got into Florida, but I couldn't get housing until January of what would have been my junior year. Georgia, actually, they had a private building. It's now owned by the university, but it was called Oglethorpe House on the campus of the University of Georgia. It was private, and they had slots available. So that was how I ended up going to the University of Georgia, is I could get there in the fall. So that's where I went to start my junior year, and it was probably the best move I ever made. It's just funny how, as you go along in life, you get placed in certain places at certain times, and you don't really understand why it's happening. But, that was just one of those things. I ended up, at the University of Georgia, and with some great people, and turned out to be a wonderful experience.
University of Georgia Bulldogs.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And it was weird, though, because like when I was going to Penn State and living in Pennsylvania, at that time, Penn State's football team was okay, but the University of Pittsburgh's football team was really good. And in the mid-'70s, they played Georgia in a bowl game, and so all the Pennsylvania TV stations were down covering the bowl game. And my first recollection of Georgia Bulldogs and their fans was Irk Russell, who was a coach.
Yes.
And one of the things he would do is he would butt heads with his players. They wore helmets, he didn't. And he would always open this cut in his head and he would start bleeding.
Aww.
So that's what I said, wow. I said, that's interesting. And their fans barked. So that's all I knew about the University of Georgia from when I was living in Pennsylvania was their fans barked and the coach butted heads with players and started bleeding. So for me to end up there was really just a strange twist. But
And
wow.
at the University of Georgia, you went to the broadcast. You graduated with what, a journalism degree?
Yes, broadcast journalism degree. So I went in there and while I was going through the broadcast curriculum, there wasn't a lot there. I mean, we did like maybe 1 or 2 newscasts. It's totally unlike it is now. So I did a little bit of that, but I mainly just wrote for the newspaper. I ended up being the sports editor for the University of Georgia Red and Black, the student newspaper, and was doing all kinds of sports writing. And then in my senior year, I started working part-time for a newspaper in Anderson, South Carolina called the Anderson Independent. And so I was doing that. And then when I got ready to graduate in December, they offered me a job as a sports writer, which I accepted because, I didn't have anything else at the moment.
Right.
And was fully planning on doing that because we got in games free. I enjoyed writing. And like 2 weeks before I was going to graduate, I walked into my advisor's office, great guy named Bill Martin, who was just an amazing fella. And he's in there, and he looks at me, and he hands me the phone, and he said, WRBL-TV in Columbus is looking for a sportscaster. Call him. And I assumed that meant I was supposed to call him right then because he had the phone in his hand. So I called him, talked to the news director, a fellow named Nick McMichael. Their sports guy was leaving. Mr. McMichael, a good guy, but he knew nothing about sports. He just wanted to fill the slot. So we chatted briefly on the phone. He said, you want to come down for an interview? So I said, sure. So like 2 weeks later, I drove down and walked into the TV station, read some scripts. I knew sports, and he asked me a couple questions off camera, and one of them was about Georgia, so I was able to ramble on. And I think either that night or maybe a day later, he offered me the job.
Wow.
The money was not, it was like $4 an hour, $5 an hour maybe to start.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think so. So I accepted, and then I had to call my friend at the newspaper and say, "Hey, I appreciate it, but I've always wanted to be, a broadcaster, and this is an opportunity." And so that's off we went into the world of television sportscasting.
In Columbus.
Yes, in Columbus, Georgia. We had never been there, but it was a nice little town. So I went, started in January of 1980. Then, got married in July of 1980 and actually got married on a Friday and worked the next day.
How romantic.
Thank you. Well, I know. Because I hadn't been there that long, and I said, I'm getting married. They said, well, there's this huge water ski tournament at Callaway Gardens that is one of the biggest sporting events in the community, and we cover it every year. They say, how about if you cover that, and then you can take the whole following week off or however many days you need after that. So got married Friday, got up Saturday morning. Marilyn and I drove to Callaway Gardens, and we covered
that's a nice honeymoon spot.
Well, it was, and they were so nice because they gave us the room and everything, and they toasted us at the dinner and everything. So it really was, and it turned out to be one of our very favorite places. But yes, so that was it. So that was the journey there.
Well, I do want to ask about, because I guess I've never asked you this about Marilyn. Where did she come from?
All right, so I met some really good friends at Georgia, and one of them's girlfriend at the time was working at Lenox Square Mall. I think at J.P. Allen was the name of the place. And Marilyn was working with her. So they set up a blind date, and we ended up going to, me and Marilyn, and then my friend Warren and his girlfriend ended up going to the Braves game, and Marilyn acted like she was a very good baseball fan and loved sports, and really one of the greatest acts in the world, because literally her family had no interest in sports whatsoever. So she really, but she put on a good act. So we went to the game and had a good time. That was in July of 1980, and 2 years later we got married. So we ended up getting married, and my friend and his girlfriend didn't end up getting married. So out of that double date, Marilyn and I ended up getting married. As a matter of fact, my friend, though, ended up marrying Marilyn's best friend. It was all kind of...
So did any of this happen at the Varsity?
We did go to the Varsity, I think, after the game, after the Braves game. Because, I mean, it was my friend Warren and I, that was one of our hangouts. We would always go. And they even had one in Athens, too, at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So we would hit that one up, yes. So I think we went to the Varsity. And then Warren and I, we did our own thing. So one of the things we would do, like in the summer, there was a miniature golf course outside of Atlanta, like I think it was in Chamblee or something out there. And they had, after midnight, because they stayed open all night, you could play for like ridiculously low things. So that's what we would go and do. So on the night of that date, Marilyn, we went to the Braves game, then we went to the Varsity, and then we took Marilyn and Warren's friend home, and then Warren and I went and
played.
Yes, we did. Got there about 1 a.m. and got a good couple hours of golf in, and then that was it. So, yes, pretty much sums up who I am. So, ever the romantic.
Oh. Wow. Mm-hmm. So, with college, you graduated from UGA and you went to Columbus. You did the Columbus thing. When did what year did you come to Macon here?
All right, so I put in a couple years in Macon, and then right at about 2 years, I got a phone call from a fella named Wayne Sawyer who was working in Macon. So happened that Don McGurk was the general manager at WMAZ in Macon. He had been in Columbus when I was there, and I didn't know him, at another station, and thought what I was doing, I guess he thought I was pretty competent at least or something enough. So he moved to Macon, and after a little while they were looking for a sports person, and so he thought of me, and so he had one of his friends call him, and I didn't really know, but it was more money. Okay.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It was hard to be less, but it was more money. And Marilyn said the mall in Macon was much nicer than the one in Columbus. So that was a selling point for her. And it was still close to her family because her parents were in Atlanta. My parents were getting ready to move to Florida. So we made the trek over. We stayed at the Ramada in downtown Macon, the one they're getting ready to implode.
Okay.
That was the nice place, and it had like a little rooftop bar and stuff you could go to. And so we came over and we visited, and the interview went well, and they called me up. A guy named Bill Tribble was the news director. Called me up about a week later and said, "Yeah, we want to hire you." And I said, and actually the money was much better than we even thought, so I said, sure. And off we went from Columbus to Macon. As we were making our trek over with the U-Haul, we went through Roberta, and there was a herd of cattle crossing the road. And Marilyn and I briefly thought, where are we going? I thought, fortunately, I learned that is Roberta. Okay, that's perfect.
Roberta,
yes. So the cows crossed. We came on over. And, with the intention of staying, when you're young, 3 years maybe.
Right.
Somewhere along those lines, and never left.
Now, it was 1982.
Yes, May of 1982.
2024, and you're still here.
Yeah, still here. May 24th, 1982. I walked in the door and have not walked out the door for the last time yet. So still, it was funny. It was one of those that we obviously enjoyed making. The people, were wonderful. And then we started our family. We came in May of 82. In November of 83, Brad, our oldest, was born. May of 85, Meredith. So we had 2 children pretty close together. And And once you start, that kind of changes the dynamics a little bit. And whenever I was looking maybe to go somewhere else, the opportunities weren't there. Whenever stations were looking for me to go, I was in a situation where I couldn't. So it just ended up working out, and really feel blessed that it worked out the way it did.
Well, you're definitely a Middle Georgia treasure.
Absolutely.
So you came, you started doing sports,
Yep.
and then eventually became the lead anchor on the news.
Yes, was doing sports and was perfectly happy doing that. Got to do a lot of great things while I was doing sports. I mean, you got to cover the Masters, you got to go to 2 World Series with the Braves, covered the Super Bowl with the Falcons, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And then one day, Dodie Cantrell, who was the news director, came to me, and she was always one of those. She said, "You're going to be a news anchor one day." And I said, "I really have no desire to," and to sit on the set, Dodie, and tell people what happened at the water board meeting. Nothing against the water authority, okay? But I just did not really, because I would stand next to, Tina Hicks was doing the news at the time, and I would watch her read the stories, and I said, wow, I'm really glad I don't have to read those stories. I said, I was just perfectly happy doing sports and getting to run out and cover games and things like that. But then in 1993, Dodie said, we're getting ready to start a 5 o'clock newscast, and I want you to be the anchor. And you go home and think about it, and then you come back and tell me tomorrow you're going to do it. That's just the way Dodie was. There wasn't really ever a choice. It was whenever she came to you and said, Frank, or whoever, I have a great opportunity for you. And you always knew, oh, my God, her idea of a great opportunity and mine probably weren't on the same wavelength. But I thought about it, and she said, oh, you still get to do some sports. Yeah, right. No, but and you'll get to work day shift. She said, well, you'll work 8:30 to 5:30. Once the 5 o'clock news is over, you'll be able to go. So I said, all right. So I said, why not? So we took the plunge and I think we went on the air with that newscast in October of 1993. So that was over 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good
Wow.
Lord. Yes, and now I did make her promise that I could still cover high school football, and she said, oh, yeah, sure, because I think, that, yes, you can definitely do that. So I did get to do that, but that was it, and then off we went, and was doing the 5 and was working dayside. I didn't realize it at the time, but the kids really weren't happy with me being dayside because I was home at night. And the kids in Maryland had their routine, and
You messed it up?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes. Like would ask them about homework, and because they had everything, and everything ran smoothly, and there, all of a sudden, Dad was, and it was. So when I ended up going back to the night shift, they were as thrilled as could be, and that was kind of a weird thing because I was doing the news with Tina, and a year later, in 1994, in the summer, it just so happened that Tina had to have a leave of absence. Just to have a medical procedure. So it was just me, and I was doing the 5, 6, and the 11. And, of course, July of 1994, Tropical Storm Alberto rolled through. And it was just me, so I was thrust into all of that coverage for like hours and hours and hours on end. One of the good things about that was a lot of it was just as the information came in, once you got it verified, you just did a lot of ad-libbing.
Right.
So-and-so is here, and so and doing this, and so when you're doing sports, you do a lot of ad-libbing.
Right.
I mean, you're a lot of off the cuff, so I could handle that, and it went well, and then Dodie said, Tina's getting ready to come back, but I want you to do the 5 and the 6 o'clock with her for a little while, and then that lasted for a few months, and then she said, you guys are working well together, I just want you to just start doing the 5, 6, and the 11.
So boom, you're the news team.
So that was it. We were the news team, and gosh, what a wonder! I mean, Lord, what a great person to learn from. Because Tina, on my best day, I could not touch her. I mean, I would sit next to her and just marvel. There was one that we were taping a special on the flood of 1994, and we were reading our parts, and I'm just sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm doing the best I can, and she is so much better than I am. I said everything I could just to stay in the same building with her because it was just like, I just shook my head and said the best, without a doubt. I mean, when she was just hitting everything, and I was trying my best. It was like I was treading water. Fortunately, it was a flood special because that's what I was doing. So yes, and she really was a great role model because she was so even-keeled, but just was perfect to work with. And at the same time, also, we had Tina and I were working with good old Bill Powell, and who was a radio legend. I missed all this radio stuff, but I got there. I came in May of 82. He started on TV in September of 1982 with no knowledge at all of the weather. But it was at a time, though, back then when, everyone knew Bill.
Right.
And, they knew he wasn't a weather guy, but they still trusted him, and they just enjoyed him. So, there was no meteorology degree, because now everyone's a meteorologist.
Right.
Like Ben's our chief meteorologist and that. And Bill was just the senior forecaster. Is what we called him. And you always used to kid him. I say, well, gosh, I didn't realize you were that old, Bill, the senior forecaster. Well, I think it was like a title of, he is the senior weather person or something like that. So we called him the senior weather. He was the senior forecaster.
That flood of 1994, that was a trying time for everyone, but also some stars kind of came out of that. That's where Liz Fabian.
Well, she was
became,
yes.
To me, I'd known Liz forever,
Yep.
but she became a real TV star then.
Thank goodness for her, because so rare that we ever would go anywhere, travel with the kids. But that July, we went up to Pennsylvania to visit my brother and some family. So we're up there, and all of a sudden it starts, Alberto starts, and Dodie calls me and says, we got to get you back here. I said, you're going to have to be on the air, because Tina was out. They were using weekend people to fill in. So I had to cut short the vacation. Marilyn and the kids stayed to fly back. Flew back like the night before the water treatment plant got overwhelmed. So I'm on the air the next day nonstop, and Liz was out in the field, thankfully.
Wow.
Because, information, it wasn't like today, where you can get it instantaneously. You did your best, but, it wasn't readily available. So we had Liz out with one of our engineers, a guy named John Timms, with the live truck, and they would kind of position themselves and move around. And so I would talk as long as I could, and I'd toss it to Liz, and she'd pick it up from there and go. And I don't know how many live hits she did, but it was my saving grace, and she did an amazing job out there.
And John Timms was... Justin, I know you didn't know John Timms, but John Timms was an amazing engineer.
Yes.
Too, because he did some radio engineering too, TV and radio. So, yeah.
He did. And
he could fix anything.
Yes, he was amazing. That's why I knew I was in good hands. So we had him on the technical end, Liz, and then I think it was the next day that Liz was going live on our midday newscast when the boat overturned behind her. Which was just, and of course, just took it right in stride and went with it. But yeah, there was the next day she was back out live, and the old craft just overturned right behind her.
Anything else besides the flood of 1994 that is a really big memory for you over the years?
Always elections. Always were like one of those things that I think the year Sonny Perdue got elected governor, because elections are just nonstop wall-to-wall coverage. But back then they were pretty predictable. You pretty much knew who was going to win, and pretty much everyone knew that Sonny Perdue was not going to win. But we had become friends, and just because he always watched, and he'd stop by and chat. So I think that night, when the election returns started coming in, and all of a sudden you could tell pretty early on that he probably was going to win. So it was just one of those totally out of left field things, that the fact that someone who was from Central Georgia and that we were friends with was going to be the governor of Georgia. Because I wasn't around when Jimmy Carter. Yeah. I was in college then when he won, so I didn't get a chance to experience that. So when that happened, I think that was one of those unique moments that you sit there and you think, wow, this is something pretty sure we'll remember. At least I will. It was just because it was just out of the ordinary. A lot of times news is that way, but to be something on that type of scale, I think.
What about behind the scenes? Pranks?
Oh, boy.
I know the broadcast business, so I know that there are things that pranks and different things that go on behind the scenes. And have you ever done the news wearing a?
Usually shorts for.
Shorts.
That was the jewel in sports, is you could more or less get away with that. See, back then, it was the anchor desk, and we all sat behind the desk. There were none of these little side sets or anything like that. I mean, Bill would go stand in front of the weatherboard, but we didn't. So you could literally get away with, and a lot of times I'd be running in from covering something, and 5:45, type out a couple of quick little scripts, and then go out and sit. And so no one would know. So you could get away with that. And and that's just, and usually there was probably somewhere I was going after the 6. So yeah, rarely. Heck, lucky if I had shoes on at that point in time. So as long as you put the old shirt and tie on and the coat, that was it.
And shorts.
That was it. And now we stand. And they move us around, so everyone can pretty much tell because they'll all, what you're wearing. So yeah, you had to, all that changed. Back in those days, though, nope. You could, as long as I was there, that's all that mattered.
What about that teleprompter? We all know about Anchorman. We all know about the guy that will read anything off the teleprompter. Anything.
Yes.
What have you guys had any pranks like that? Where somebody...
well, like the day I called myself Lori Johnson.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yes. Came on the air. So a lot of times we will flip up things on the fly, Lori and I. We'll say, okay, no, you need to start the newscast, and I'll go, well, and we don't change it in the teleprompter. Well, I don't know where my mind was, but I came on the air, and Amita said, "Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lori Johnson." and then she, of course, is supposed to say, and she comes on the air, and then she has to sit there and say, "And I'm Lori Johnson." Oh, we didn't live in infamy. And I always tell people that. They said, "Don't you ever get nervous, or don't you ever worry about TV?" I said, I always get worried I'm going to say something dumb on TV. I said, "Don't worry." I said, "Chances are you'll never call yourself somebody else, okay?" Which is what I did. And, oh, gosh, yeah, that's still out there floating around. So
I need to find that.
Yes, oh, yeah.
On YouTube?
Just ask Ben. Or Chris Smith, who used to be one of our meteorologists. They have it, trust me. So, yes, one of the things that happened. That, fortunately, was probably the worst. Other than that, most of the time, we were able to keep going. Sometimes you'll come across a name or something like that, and you'll know flat out you just butchered it.
Right.
But there's not
just
much.
Keep going.
Well, so what I've gotten in the habit of doing, like if there's some sort of name or something like that, I just kind of roll it over really quickly. So that's what they make fun. That's what they laugh. They say, "Oh yeah, just kind of do the Frankerism or something they call it." So just yeah, because Lori's going to try and sit there and sound it out. There are just some names you just have to roll over, and you do it quickly, and that way, people more than likely won't notice it. So, but if you sit there and you kind of try and then they're sitting there thinking, "Oh, that looks like I don't think she said that right, or he said that." So you just roll over it. Much the better for it. So no, but the teleprompter, yes, it is. It has upgraded now. It used to be like a conveyor belt. And people they'd tape the scripts, and then one person would roll it. Well, and so you were only as good as the person running it. Some were better than others. Some would roll it backwards sometimes. Some weren't really too invested in what we were doing, and the eyes would start to glaze over, and they might nod off. So you'd have to kind of be prepared for that. Now we actually now I'm the one who runs the teleprompter now.
I was going to tell you. So, Justin, you're going to have to go up to the TV station. You probably have been up to the TV station, haven't you?
I've never been.
No, no. Well, Laura, there still is a standard, okay? As to who
That's right. That's right.
Who can get you.
Okay, so the teleprompter. I've been up there a couple of times to do some TV commercials. And honestly, Frank is the best on the teleprompter I've ever seen. That thing rolls so fast when he's talking because it'll roll at a certain speed.
Yes.
So you can make it go as slow or as fast as you want to. So I'm sure if it was me or you doing the teleprompter, we'd be like, "Good evening. I'm Lori Johnson."
Oh, yeah.
But when Frank's reading off the teleprompter, I've seen it, it's going like 90-0. It's like,
Right.
Yes, I am the fastest reader in the building. Yes,
I
always.
couldn't even keep up with. I was watching the teleprompter
By far
while
the
he was reading
fastest
the
reader.
news, and I was like, I couldn't even keep up with what was going on.
He's definitely got some superpowers.
Because when they time things out, they always say, "All right, who's reading it?" Because if Frank's reading it, then it'll be read in this amount of time. So, yes, I have to. I do go to good clip, and sometimes I'll just shorten. Another thing is I'll shorten like stuff on the fly as I'm going. I mean, I'll sit there and think as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, let me take it, and then I'll just change it and go.
So your editing is in your head.
Yes, definitely. And sometimes now, like, especially if it's a story like you've already read, like earlier in a newscast in a different form, as you're reading it for the second time or something, you can recall, I can shorten this, because I don't think we need to say that. So, yes, you kind of edit as you go without taking any of the pertinent facts out. But sometimes some of our younger reporters and people they put a lot of information in there, and that really doesn't necessarily need it. So, I mean, I'll just start chopping through it. And then the producer will get in my ear. All right, now I'm a minute late because you just read that script so fast. And so now what am I going to do? And I said,
So, Justin, you know about that.
Yes.
That thing in the ear, because I know Justin was on Football Friday Night with you earlier this year.
I was telling Laura, I said, Frank has got these superpowers. We go live out here in the parking lot on Football Friday Night. I've got the producers talking in my ear. They're telling Frank, camera one, we got something else. And they're saying all this while he's giving the interview. And I was thinking I was about to have a Lori Johnson moment.
You forget where you are, what you're doing.
Yes.
An acquired art, because the natural tendency is, especially when you're first starting out, is if you're like reading a script and the producer says something, well, the first natural tendency is to stop, to listen to what she's saying. So that's one of the things you have to learn is keep reading the script while at the same time comprehending.
Yes.
That's why I always tell our producers. Now, fortunately, in the headphones, they're pretty loud. Sometimes they're not very loud, and it's almost like you're guessing as to what they're trying to tell you. And that's why I always tell them, just say it loudly. I know it may seem like you're shouting, but say it loudly, and it's not going to bother us.
Especially on Football Friday Night, because you've got the cheerleaders, the band was behind us. It was wide open, womp, womp, womp. Yes. And then all the producers were talking, and Frank was going, and I was going, oh, man. Oh, this is it, man.
Those are the fun things.
Welcome to the big leagues.
Yes, that's the fun part about it.
Live.
Yeah, and it was live. There was no covering it up.
Yes, there was no. And he did a great job but that's the fun part, is actually out in the field and getting a chance to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And because you're kind of out there on your own. I mean, you're kind of trying to keep it in some semblance of a format. They all make fun of me because I'll start thanking people and this and that. They call them Frank yous now, because I like to thank the cheerleader coach and whoever's the band director and different things. And so they just say, all right. And then I'll finally hear him say, enough. And then go on from there. So,
well, speaking of Football Friday Night, so that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to come out here, because you've spent a lot of Football Friday Nights out here at Jones County. Was Football Friday Night your idea? When did that come about? It
kind of was. So Brad Bibb and I were doing sports and at that time, and we would go out and cover high school football. And there's a lot of games. We'd go out and cover a lot of games, or as many as we could, and then you'd come back, but the sports segment was only like 4.5 to 5 minutes, and we were covering like 4 and 5 games at that time, and there was literally, there was no way. I said, we're not really serving a purpose. I said, we're getting 3 plays from these games, when we actually could run a minute and a half to 2 minutes, I said. So I said, is there any way we could expand the show? And they said, no, we might be able to give you a little bit more time. Well, then the salespeople got involved, and all of a sudden it popped into their heads, well, maybe we could make some money off this. Maybe we could give you guys your own show. So that's how it started. They said, if you can fill it, we'll give you a 30-minute show at the end of the newscast on Friday nights. And
wow.
And we said, sure. We jumped in. And to start with it, we obviously had more time, but still, there was only a couple of us shooting.
Right.
So we would get coaches to come on. Mm-hmm. That weren't playing that night, or maybe that did play, that were close to the station, and they would come on and we'd interview them to kind of help fill out the time. I remember the coach at Warner Robins at the time, the legendary Robert Davis, was one of the great coaches. Well, Well, he wasn't going to come the night they played, but he wanted to come on his off night, and he said, well, I'll come now, but you're going to have to take me out to eat at Shoney's, which was right next to the station.
Yes, it was.
So he brought him and two of his buddies. So we interviewed them, and they stayed open late on Fridays, and after the show, we all went up to Shoney's.
Oh, yeah.
That's how we got. So that's how it started, and I'm trying to think. It seems like I'm thinking mid-'80s, maybe 85 or 86, somewhere in there is when it started. And then and obviously people loved it. We really enjoyed doing it.
Right.
And then we started getting, more people to help us to the point now that this year, I think we had 9 people shooting games for us this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fleet of people that
we
go
do.
across
We try and get
Georgia.
from 10 to 12 games. It's almost like one of those, though, because, we don't want just to show up at your game, stay for 10 minutes, shoot 3 plays, and I mean, that some stations do that.
Right.
In bigger cities, they'll say, we covered 16 games, and what you showed 3 plays. I mean,
Right.
you showed up at a game, and I mean, that's not covering it. So we found from 10 to 12 games, that way we can give at least a minute 15 to every game. Sometimes some games will get more, depending.
Right.
And we found that works the best. And then, of course, we incorporated, the fans of the week, and then we do the top play and the hardest hit and things like that, and kind of the quiz and everything. And, of course, sales found ways to sponsor each and every one of those segments. So
course.
we have to do them every year, and so we just continue on, and that is because people say, well, can't you find people to go shoot? I said, that is the highlight of I said, I love shooting high school football.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I see people like, you renew those acquaintances like every year, like in the fall.
Yep.
Coaches and fans and the sheriff's deputies and people, and that is the highlights. That's the perfect way to end the work week.
Wow. So the rib rocker, did it come along is that as old as Football Friday Night?
Yes, but it's changed depending on who the sponsor was. Oh, I was trying to think. I know someone. Oh, we've had several different ones. It was the Subway sandwich of the day for a while.
Okay.
It was like a rib place up here in Jones County, and I can't remember.
Old Clinton Barbecue?
No, I can't. It didn't last that long, and I think it was from up here. So it was a different form of that.
Right.
And then finally, we just decided to make it the rib rocker, and then we would just, the sponsor would just, so I think right now, like Ortho Georgia, I think fittingly enough sponsors the rib rocker. So that's how but it changed hands several different times from different things depending on who was sponsoring it. Till now it's just the generic rib rocker.
Awesome.
Well, I know it happened this year, but how many times have you gotten clobbered doing football?
This was the first year I got plowed completely.
Okay.
There have been some times when I've kind of gotten, hit a little bit, but was able to more or less stay upright. This was the first year I never saw it coming. I was filming, and the next thing I knew, wow, I was on the ground. Just the referee backpedaling. He didn't see me. Obviously didn't see him. And down I went. Fortunately, it was on grass, so it was soft. And no worse the wear outside of a black eye. And that was because I was looking through the viewfinder, which was pressed up against my eye, and really was fortunate that there was nothing broken. And but that was the first, and I'm a lot more cautious now. But you're always aware because, you're shooting sometimes on the sidelines, and, the players will start to veer towards you, so you kind of back up a little bit. But that was the first time I ever actually got drilled. And don't ever want to go through that again.
I know you don't.
No, so now I'll get more.
You've never been tackled before. I just wondered.
Yes, no, it was. And every time I come to a game now, the referee starts chuckling. They said, "All right, whoever's running the sideline, watch out for Mr. Frank over there." Okay, coaches will do the same thing. They just sit there and they just laugh. So it was interesting, yeah. But that was a first, and it was. So I guess this was probably like my 44th year covering high school football,
and never been tackled.
No, that was really the
Wow.
first time.
Those are pretty good odds.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Well, a lot of times now, I have to admit, now we'll go. I will spend more time now shooting in the end zone because it's less likely you're going to get hit in the end zone.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes you just feel like you just need to be in the middle of the sideline. Sometimes like that, and there you go. So.
Any coaches that you really, really love?
No, I think anyone who does that, but there have always been some that was good friends with. Like from the get-go, Edgar Hatcher was coaching at Southwest at the time and was it's still to this day a really good friend, and so much so that there was he actually let us do this. The NFL players were I think they went on strike back, and this was back in the 80s. And Brad Bibb and I were trying to figure out something to do, and I said, all right, let's just do a tongue-in-cheek, like what would happen if the high school players went on strike. I said, we called up Edgar and said, Edgar, we just want to do this little thing. We're going to say the high school players are on strike and that you guys are going to have to play. So he got his staff together, and we went out and filmed Edgar and his staff like doing drills, blocking and tackling these older coaches out there, like kicking extra points and all. And so to this day, we still chuckle about it. And we had to make sure and reiterate that this was just this is not actually happening, but but that was one of
That's pretty cute, though.
Yes, and it really was a neat little segment we did. And I just really neat people. Mark Faraba, who coached at First Presbyterian Day School in Stratford, still an assistant at ACE, is a really good friend. Coach Davis, who has since passed. Conrad Nix, who coached at Northside. I mean, and just a lot of wonderful friendships with coaches to this day that many of them are still coaching, but even those that aren't, we still keep in touch with. And it's just a unique bond, coaches. I mean, that's just, and things like that. And the one thing I love about it is, as my kids will tell you, a lot of people, I mean, I know a lot of people, obviously, and there are a lot of people who know me who I don't know their name, but there are sometimes I'll take a stab at a name, and sometimes it's not correct.
Right.
So, and they'll laugh, and they'll sit there and say, Dad, And so the good thing is, with the coaching fraternity, all you got to do is call them Coach.
That's right.
Yeah, that was it. So, like, a lot of them, I do still know their first name, but others, they're a coach, and it's just like, Coach, how you been? And it's just, because that's a title that they earned and they still love, and you can get away with that. So, yeah, Coach, good to see you.
That covers them all.
That covers it all right there. So putting all my secrets out here now. So
has there ever been any, like, I know there's been through the years you have, been able to cover kids in high school that have went pro and things like that. Is there one that you saw from the beginning, you were like, this guy is going to make it big? I just know it. Even in football or baseball or anything, is there anybody that you thought maybe you saw on the ground floor? Well,
obviously that... I know I used to cover kids in midget football. We used to cover, like, of course, now it was Macon Midget Football League, and there were some of those kids that you knew were going to go on to be good, but there were some that would always surprise you. Obviously, of recent times, watching Jake Fromm when he was in high school, I mean, you knew that he was probably going to do something at the next level, and obviously he turned out to be a superb collegiate athlete. But some, like Kevin Brown, I didn't necessarily see him in high school, but, he was like a scrawny kid in high school and was one of those kids you never would have anticipated would grow on to be like a baseball superstar, but just developed as he went along. Somebody like him. Others, it's so hard to make it at a really elite level. There are some like Bud Dupree, who I covered at Wilkinson County, who still plays in the NFL. Casey Hayward, who I covered at Perry High School, had a really good NFL career. There were people like that, but there were some who were flat-out superstars in high school that just, for whatever reason, it just never panned out that they were ever really able to excel at the next level. So in that level, I mean... There are some who just had great high school careers, and that's what I tell people. I mean, a lot of people will say, "Oh, but they never did anything." Well, they were elite at that level. I said, you just don't understand that once you get to that next level, I mean, you're competing against kids who are at the same level as you were in high school.
Exactly.
High school, these kids were better than almost everybody they played against.
Right.
You get to the college level,
everybody's a superstar.
Everybody's yes, exactly, especially nowadays. And I mean, so. There's no guarantee of that. So some just managed to it just worked out for them.
Right. Have you ever seen some coaches maybe that were coaching high school or even students that have maybe moved up and are coaching at the next level at college or pro or anything like that?
Said a lot of the ones that especially back in the day, they were just like old school high school football coaches. That's almost like pretty much all they ever really wanted to do.
Right.
And it was a lot different back then. And nowadays, I mean, most of them are looking to go do something else. But most of the legendary high school coaches, that's all they ever really wanted to do was be a high school football coach. I mean, they grew up around it. A lot of them grew up, sons of coaches. Kind of like Kirby Smart was a son of a coach.
Right.
And was one that pretty much was destined, as he will tell you, that's what he wanted to do.
Right.
I mean, he was a good player at the University of Georgia, but there was nothing else that was there was not going to be an NFL career along those lines. But that's another thing, too. A lot of times you can be a really good coach, but if you're in the wrong place, it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, you getting into the right situation, and I think that's the same for athletes, too. Has a lot to do with how much you can achieve. I mean, you can be a great coach, but if you're not, and you can elevate your team, but but you may not never get to the elite level because you're just not coaching those type of athletes.
Right.
I mean, but to be at the right spot, obviously, Kirby Smart's probably going to be successful wherever.
No matter what.
But to be able to, at the level he's at, obviously, he's able to get great players to come to the University of Georgia, and he coaches them and makes them even better. But, I mean, if he was at a smaller place, his teams would probably be better, but they probably wouldn't do what he's doing now.
Makes sense.
Yes, sir. And then,
what about your own kids? Did any of them play sports?
They did. They unfortunately inherited my athletic abilities. My oldest Brad, he played football, but he didn't really like to get banged around as such. Meredith, she was a good softball player, but had no drive to do that as she got older. Nick he developed a love for music growing up, so he really. And then Matt had some good Little League years and was a good cross-country runner. But as he got older and got like to be a junior and senior, he just kind of lost the desire to go run 5 miles every day in practice and things like that. So now they each developed their own unique talents, but no, Matt and love sports and all, but no, they were unfortunately were just like me. I just was not a good athlete.
Matt's a really good dancer, and so are you.
My dancing is legendary. Okay. See, they all make fun of my dancing.
I'm not making fun of it at all.
Well, Ben Jones will definitely tell you. He's even now, if every chance he gets to mention it on the air, he does. And granted, I'm not the most.
I think you're a great dancer.
Thank you. See, I have my own style.
Yes.
And I give it my best. Okay, I'm going to give you a good, solid effort. And it may not look pretty, but you know what? It is what I am, and I'm not afraid to wade in.
Well, that's right. You just dance with abandon.
Thank you.
And joy.
Yes.
There you go.
And that's what dancing is all about anyway.
Thank you. Right. See?
Makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm. At a wedding or whatever, I'm going to wade on in. I'm going to lead the pack, and we'll go from there.
There we go.
And say what they will, but I'm giving it. Yeah, exactly? What is it that defines what's a good dancer anyway? So thank you, Laura.
I think it just takes a little effort, a little courage to get out there, and then everybody else will follow along.
That's definitely it.
That's right.
And fortunately, I mean, my reputation is what it is, so everyone knows. So I can launch on out there.
Right.
And everyone, it's not like I'm this guy and they're looking out there and saying, gosh, that guy's horrible. Who is he? I mean, they know, that's Frank. I mean, they know what it is. So, I mean, I can go ahead with abandon out there.
There you go.
That's the way it should be.
Exactly.
And again, with joy.
Yes.
I mean, you're having a good time.
See? Thank you.
And making other people have a good time.
That's what exactly.
That's what life's about.
So, I know, it is. So
speaking of the good times and joy and bringing hope and things like that, so we talk about good things and doing charity work and that type of thing on the podcast here. And I know you're a big player with Miracle Treat Day every year with us. You're always at the Forsyth location up there with Mr. Ronnie.
Yeah.
What's some other things, some other big memorable moments maybe across your tenure here with charity work?
So when I started here, the station was very big in the Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Telethon.
Okay.
And Doris Martin and Jimmy Waters were doing it. And when I first came, a fellow named Chuck England was the news anchor. And so he was doing it too. And then I think he left or whatever, and they were looking to someone to fill in. And so Don McGurk asked if I would be interested, and I said, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So that's how I got involved in the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon. And back then, It was 24 hours. I mean, yes, and that meant you were on at 3 in the morning,
right?
Trying to fill 15 minutes getting the phones to ring when there was no one. The beauty of that was, though, when we first started, the first hour or so, and like the last hour, Reverend Jimmy took over. And when we were looking to fill, we could just toss it to Reverend Jimmy.
Right.
And he would do what he called the heart walk, in which he would try and get all the phones to light up at one time. And so he would go take it away from there. So I was doing that, and it was enjoying it. And then all of a sudden we started partnering with the Children's Miracle Network.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously having kids and the fact that, having been to the Children's Hospital, it's something that kind of felt near and dear to me, and it was a neat thing. And then also every year you would go on a trip down to Disney World and all. So that was but originally actually we started in Disneyland because that's where it was. It was out in California, and then we switched. So that's how I got involved in that. And I've watched the Children's Hospital grow from what was like a little wing on the 3rd floor.
Right.
And then they got their own little floor over there and to becoming the amazing place that it is now. So that's how we kind of got going. And obviously it was something very close to Maryland and all with our kids and everything. And, we knew kids who had been treated there and turned into something really, really neat. And that truly is a special place. And then, of course, Miracle Treat Day was always part of it, where I could go make the world's largest blizzard.
Right.
And to this day still do. And it's just a neat thing. And you meet so many wonderful people.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Inspirational people. I mean, and people the kids who just have gone through so much yet who are still filled with joy and bring joy, and their parents who are just amazing people and who carry on and put life in perspective for you.
Absolutely.
We wake up every day and we're grumbling about this or that or everything, and then you meet these people.
Yep.
Who have these, sick children and who spend all this time in the hospital not knowing what their outcomes are going to be, but yet carry on, and it's just truly inspiring and amazing.
It definitely puts your problems in perspective, and you realize you don't really have any issues.
Right.
And you get to meet so many wonderful people. As you mentioned, Ronnie Daniels, a good friend of Forsyth, and then folks like yourself, Justin. Don't ever sell yourself short, my friend, because what you do is truly, truly amazing. And those are the things I think that I've enjoyed the most about what I do, is the people that you meet who are just wonderful folks, going above and beyond, whether it is a child or a parent or folks like yourself and folks like Laura, to you too, Laura. That's why I feel like I've been so blessed to do what I do here in Central Georgia, because this place has been so good to me and my family and my kids, and I've met so many wonderful people. And at the time, I wasn't sure why I was put here, but you soon realize that God is in charge and he puts you where you're supposed to be. And then, but he expects you to make the most of it. And it has just truly been a wonderful journey.
Absolutely. And everybody in this town and everybody in Central Georgia, they adore you. And
they have no choice, because apparently I'm never leaving.
You're never leaving.
Really, yeah. It's like one of those, you run into people like, yeah, I went to school, grew up watching you, and then I moved away. And then I came back 20 years later, and you're still here.
And there you were.
Yep. In their mind, they're probably thinking, still unable to find another job. I feel really bad for the guy. Apparently no one else wants to hire him. So, yes. So, well, that is, and it is truly. And I love folks. And people said, don't you? One of my young reporters the other day, he happened to be in Publix when I was in there or something like that. And then the next day he said, how do you deal with that? He said, everyone coming up and talking to you. And I said, you don't realize at the time, I said, but that is probably the best part of the job, is that people feel like
they feel like you're
your friend. Like, well, Laura, you know everybody too, and people they feel. I said that's the best feeling, is they feel like they can come, and that we are somebody, like a member of their family, who they invite us in every day, and they feel like that you are with them. And I said when you get older, I said you'll understand. I think what's that? It's actually a really neat thing. And I said, and I never get tired of people wanting to come up and talk or take a picture or things like that. I said
you're always so gracious everywhere, all the time, and. I mean, in addition to what you do for Beverly and Adults and Children's Hospital and what you do for the rescue mission, there are a lot of little things that you're involved in all the time too, or have been throughout the years. Because I know people go, well, they'll call me up maybe to do something. I'll say, well, Frank's going to be there. Okay, well, count me in then.
Count me in.
I mean,
Frank, stop doing some of these things, okay?
no, but I mean, you do give of yourself so much all the time.
Well, if that's the lead, if that makes an event or something a little bit better, or if that's the I feel like that's the least I can do, and just like. Because these people, how these events are, it takes a lot of time and effort for people to put them on.
It does.
And if we can help either by mentioning it or just showing up for a little bit and just getting a chance to talk with people, then that's what I tell people, we have the easy part. I said, all I have to do is talk about it. There's all that work that's going on behind the scenes, the people that are actually doing it. I said, you're the ones doing it, so... But yeah, there have been a lot of different things. I mean, I enjoy each one of them. Every year I get to introduce a really neat person at the Mercer baseball banquet. I mean, and that's always a fun thing. I do the duck race every year in Montezuma. Started back in 1995, the year after the flood of '94. They started the Great Beaver Creek Duck Race, which I have been doing almost every year since then. Even if you are driving through downtown Montezuma, there is a Malloy Edwards Way up there. For me and Johnny Edwards, another fellow who started the same year I did, so and things like that. And I mean, I really do. I still do enjoy it. I still, they put a microphone in your hand and they let you go. And I said, you never know what you're going to get, but I'm going to be enthusiastic about it, and we're going to have fun.
I do want to. Frank's a runner. I don't know if you know that, but
I did not know that.
No, you wouldn't know, but well. It was kind of one of those things I pretty much had to start doing because, I don't go to work till 3,
right.
And so there was no reason not to be doing some sort of physical activity. And I think with our first child, Brad, I think I kind of ballooned up there. I went over 220, 230 or something like that.
Right.
So, and you can look back at some of those pictures. It's kind of the chubby, the very fat face. The TV will put a few pounds on you anyway, so right. I didn't really. The tight collar and the fat face. So I decided that, probably exercise was probably going to be needed. So and running was one of the easiest things to do. I mean, a pair of shoes and you can just kind of do it at your own pace and just go out and run. And so I started doing that. And then, then you start kind of becoming a part of the running community. And then they'll ask you, hey, do you want to MC, our different, United in Pink every year. I do their race. I do the Joshua's Wish race every year, kind of the MC. Well, as long as you're there, you may as well go run.
Right.
Yeah, you've done the Cantrell.
Yeah, the Cantrell Center. We've done that for many years, too. We've done that. So that kind of, and you meet a lot of very neat people. Now, as I've gotten older and the knees have kind of gotten a few more miles, I have scaled back a little bit. And now that I joined a gym a couple years ago when I turned 65. So I do most of my running on treadmills, but still get out and do maybe 5 or 6 5Ks, every year associated with different events. And like once a week or so, I'll still go cruise the neighborhood.
There you go.
And things like that. And I like that. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's kind of a feeling of accomplishment that you've done something like that. So
I have that shirt, that says, I'm a bomb technician. If you see me running, that's the only way you're going to see me running. I like walking, but running...
Walking's probably just as good for you. Yes, there are some days I will just go walk too. Yeah. So
running's a whole different thing.
Yes, but I mean, it's one of those things. As I've gotten older, I just figure out I got to make sure I'm taking care of myself because when Marilyn passed, then it's just I'm pretty much in charge of Nick at the moment, my son, because he was he's in a wheelchair, and so I pretty much transport him around. Although he can pretty much do anything he wants to, he just doesn't drive. So. And you start thinking about those things. Well, I want to still be able to do things. And, as you get older, eventually, Laura, I guess we'll retire. I'm not sure. Justin, what do you think?
I think we'll be watching y'all for years.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's what I'm afraid. So eventually, at some point, I probably will. So I want to still be in good health to go do things.
That's right.
But the beauty of my job, after you've been there a while, you get plenty of time off. So,
yeah.
I mean... Some of the young reporters ask, how much time off do you get? And they'll just shake their head. They'll say, I'm never going to be at a place long enough to have that much time off.
How much time off do you get?
Let's see. I get nearly about 35 paid days, not counting holidays. So it's like 45 days or something like that.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is like eight weeks.
I think I'm
or
kind of
so.
getting ripped off at my job because I don't get near that many.
Some of them, if you have to use them as sick days. Fortunately, I'm not sick that often, so maybe 1 or 2 days a year is sick, and the rest of the time. But you'll get to the point you'll think, wow.
What am I going to do on this
Well,
day
that's
off?
exactly. And you'll end up, and Ben and I laugh about it every year because it's the same thing. You end up in December with about 10 days off to take.
Right.
And I'm thinking, why we get to this every year? There's only so much you can do in December. The weather's not great.
Exactly.
Not like we're big Christmas shoppers.
Right.
I said, so we're just taking days just on like the random Wednesday.
I know. I told Justin, I'm taking off like every Friday through the end of the year because I got to use these days.
Yep.
I don't want to lose them.
See? But see, with me, with football season, we
You
do
can
football.
do it then.
It runs we do football Friday night, runs 16 weeks. So those are 16 Fridays that I'm blocked in on, and there's other stuff going on. So yeah, and I never start early enough. You're always into June, and you've taken 2 days, and now
Right.
And even in the summer, there's only so much you can do.
And when you get into the ratings period, now I don't know how it works in TV, but you're probably not allowed to take vacation during ratings.
Yes,
Which cuts down your time even more.
That's February, May, and November. Is used, and it still kind of is, but those are the 8, so you couldn't take those times off. Now it's gotten to the point with all the way they track things. It's almost like ratings is like every day now of the year. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have measurements of all year round, so that's enabled us if we need to take time, like in February, May, or November. We can do that, but that just now started, and because the ratings now, is tracked almost all the time. But yeah, well, radio, your ratings periods ran forever. Do they still? Weren't they?
I feel like they're half the year.
Yes, it seemed like you would be going on. We would just have like a 4-week block, and radio you'd be on for like 6.
We have 3 months blocks,
yes.
I think, or something. 3 or 4 months.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
You would be forever doing stuff. So.
Right.
Yeah, but that cuts down too. So you're somewhat limited anyway when you can take time off. Obviously, January you're not really thinking of. You're not looking to, because you just had to take it all in December because you saved it up, and so January and then February would be ratings. So now you're into March, and
there's all kinds of things going on in March.
Yes,
and April and
yes.
May.
So there's stuff. So I always end up with more. I think I still have a couple days yet, but I don't think I'm going to be able to take. But.
I'll take them.
That's a good
Yeah,
problem to
that's
have.
right. That's what all the young kids say.
Transfer those over
They
to
say,
me.
Mr. Malloy, can I have your time? I said, if I could give it to you, I would. I said, because I understand, because you're young, and most of them, because I think, Laura, that probably folks like you and I who have been at one place for a long time, probably that's not going to be the case down the road, I don't see. I think the young people I talk with now, they're much more mobile, much more willing to move and feel like they need to be moving, much more open to changing careers. Mm-hmm. That I don't know if I'm pretty much sure no one will ever stay, to do what you do for as long as you've done it, and in broadcasting, and myself too, to do it. I just don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case.
Well, one thing we have to worry about is radio and TV going to even be around in 10 years?
Yes, I seem to think it will. I think people they're always going to want to listen to the radio, and I think they'll always watch TV. Of course, they get their news in so many different ways now that we even changed. Back when I first started, we had the 6 o'clock and the 11 o'clock. We did 30 minutes at 6 and 30 minutes at 11. And people would, that's when they would tune in. Yeah, because that's how they got their news. They'd read the newspaper in the morning. Right. And they'd watch, the news at 6, and those that stayed up would watch it at 11, and that's how you did it. And then, and even then, we thought, wow, this is hard work. We're booking it. And then all of a sudden, then they added all of a sudden the 5 o'clock newscast came on. Then we started a 2-hour morning newscast, and it just.
And now you got the apps. You got where to text you if something's going on.
Oh yeah. So now people know. So now you're more or less expounding on what they already know.
Right.
And that's where the revenue is now. That's where we've pretty much maxed out what we can do on TV revenue wise.
Right.
That you now through streaming and through the apps and everything like that. And that's where more and more advertisers are going now that way. So the young people are having to do all that. I've pretty much been grandfathered into that. They didn't know that I probably can't do that. They don't know how to.
So let me ask you, do you understand streaming?
Well, I mean, only because you can.
Because I don't.
No, because we'll explain, like, well, they'll say, all right, this is what you need to explain, how you need to explain it. I said, really? That's how this works? I said, but no, I know it's an app and you can put it on these smart TVs and everything like that.
But
so,
you don't do it.
No, 13 WMAZ Plus. That's where we're going now, and that's where we're putting all our stuff, and that's where it's, and the young people, they get all that and they know all that. And they can, they can shoot stories on their phones and different things like that. And they text a mile a minute. I mean, I'm trying to get there, but I still, like with the little one finger, like the old typewriter thing I was trying to type a score or text a score back. And I was like standing next to one of the coaches, a guy named Jesse Hicks, who's still coaching. And he looked at me and he said, Frank, by the time you text that score, we're going to be in the third quarter, he said, and that score is going to be way long gone. And
that'd be obsolete.
Yes, that's more or less what he was telling me. So yeah, I mean, literally, people can. I don't even know how they do it, but they can do something else and still text at the same time.
Ooh.
Sorry, and then they laugh when I tell them about how we started out with typewriters.
Oh yeah.
We were tapping away on that typewriter.
We were tapping away on typewriters.
Mm-hmm. And,
exactly.
Oh, yeah. And if you had the electric, oh, wow.
You were.
Yes, thank you. I didn't have the electric. I was like the old just tapping away in that thing. And, you'd put the script in. It had like 5 different copies. One for that we would take with us, one for the teleprompter, one for the director, one for the audio person, and one for a file or something like that. So you'd have to type the script. And then you'd have to take it out, then you'd rip it apart and separate the little things. And if you made a mistake, you'd probably have to go back and do it again, or you'd like take it out and like cross it out and like pencil in the word that you wanted to put on top. I don't even know. We made it work, but that was
It was a little more complicated.
Yes, and you'd go out and shoot on. Fortunately, I missed the film days. I got there just as we were on videotape, but you'd still have to take the tape and put it into a machine and then edit to another machine. Now we shoot everything on like little scan discs, and it's the greatest thing now. So now I go out and cover a high school football game. You come in, you throw it in your computer, and every play you shot pops up on the screen. And then you just, as long as you mark them,
right?
So, like, say if there's a shot of the scoreboard, I know the play before was a touchdown.
Right.
That's how I mark my plays.
There's a method to it. Okay.
So yes, and then if there's like a good defensive, Jones County makes a good defensive play, I'll shoot the little goalpost.
I got you.
So I can come back, and then that way, so you can literally edit in a game in 15 minutes. Where before, you'd have to scroll through and try and remember where that play happened, and it would take forever. So the beauty of technology in that is the cameras are much smaller, and it's much easier to go ahead and like do things like that. So,
wow.
Yes.
Justin, I want you to ask Frank what he did last month that was pretty cool.
Uh-oh. What did you do last month?
Do last month? It was my trip.
Yes.
Oh yes, my daughter and I went and saw Taylor Swift.
Oh really?
Yes, thank you. So now I've been a Taylor Swift fan for a long time. Going back, and Meredith and I have always been fans, and so we went and saw her in Atlanta like 4 or 5 years ago. And and it was great. We really had a good time. And then obviously COVID came and everything, and so she didn't tour. And so she went back on tour last year. We obviously thought it would be an easy thing. I mean, you just buy your tickets and all of a sudden you couldn't buy tickets. She came to Atlanta and did 3 shows, and we couldn't get tickets to any of them.
Wow.
And then finally kind of realized the tour was coming to an end, and one of the last stops, and unfortunately one of Meredith's friends somehow, because you have nowadays, it's these weird things, you have to sign up to even get the chance to buy tickets.
Right.
Wow.
It's no longer you just go online and buy the tickets. No, you have to sign up.
Register.
Yes. And they'll send you a link and say, hey, you're in, or you're one of the ones. Well, Meredith and I never got that link. One of her friends who really didn't even care about Taylor Swift said, Meredith, I'll sign up for you. He's the one who got the link, of course.
Wow.
So we went to Indianapolis. Oh, God, it was fun. It was good. Mary and I had a great time. Just the people. It was 95 to 5% female to male, and I was probably one of the 5 oldest people in the building, but it was all good. I mean, because it was fun, and it was just a unique experience, and those are things that I don't do a lot of, okay?
Right.
Paranoid about even going to the airport, about this whole trip. I was a nervous wreck, and and I kept thinking, I said, Frank, you need to get out and do stuff. More things, but I mean, I just enjoy Central Georgia, and I do enjoy doing things around here. So but these young people now, they'll go off at a whim's notice. But that was something that was really fun, and kind of rekindle the fact that I probably need to try and do some more things like that.
That was very cool, and you got to do it with your daughter.
Yes, and that was one of the neat things. It was really great, and the concert was. I mean, she is truly an amazing performer. That was 3.5 solid hours of her singing, and so it was worth. Well, I would say it was worth every penny, but Meredith refused to tell me how much the tickets were. No, See, she does that all the time. We'll go. Like she got tickets. We went and saw Zach Bryan in the summer up in Atlanta, and no idea how much those tickets were because she never told me. So
wouldn't let you know. That's good stuff.
Wouldn't let me know. So it was neat. So that was a neat thing. Thank you.
That's a sweet gesture on her part.
Yes, I know. She is. Well, as I get older, Meredith will be the one that will take care of me. The boys, I'm not too sure about. They may check on me, but Meredith will be the one. So that's another reason. I don't want to burden her. So that's another reason I'm trying to stay in good health. But I'll try and put that off as long as I can, so they can live their own life. So.
Well, one last thing that I want to ask, because we asked this to a lot of people, and you've met a lot of people over your tenure here in Central Georgia. But have you ever been starstruck by anybody that you have met or that you had to interview? Had you ever had that starstruck feeling, or was you ever cool, calm, and collective with pretty much everybody?
Probably. That's a good question. It would probably be an athlete. I think maybe Tiger Woods back in his heyday, only because he was, he was an anomaly. He was a superstar African-American black golfer that just didn't happen, and had this huge following and was so elite at what he did that when I had the opportunity, I think I was probably as nervous interviewing him than almost anybody else I've ever done, only because he had this aura about him and he was so focused and, at what he did, that I was just kind of worried that, you were going to come off as that guy or something like that, that he, as you asking questions, he's looking like thinking, where's this guy from? and just send him back there. So, but for the most part, I think some of the neatest interviews you do are just with normal everyday people who you get to hear their stories about what they've done and some of the things they've accomplished. Because that's when everyone always thinks, they said, oh, God, you get to interview a lot of great famous people. And I said, what, the best interviews usually are just everyday people because you learn, because they have genuine stories to tell, and they are just down to earth, and you just learn from them. Because, a lot of the superstars and everything, they do so many interviews that, they're just pretty well just focused. They're pretty much going to say a lot of the same things, and you're rarely going to get a glimpse behind the scenes of them, right? For the most part, although I do find musicians probably are more likely to let you behind the scenes sometimes. I just seem to think that they have stories to tell too. Most of them really, didn't blossom into stardom when they were growing up. They had difficult times, and I think you learn the things that you'll learn about that. But those, I think just listening to people's stories. I said, when young people ask me, how do you do a good interview and all, I said, the best interviews is probably where you spend most of the time listening. Right. And I said, and because they say, well, I've got, I want to do I got all my questions. And I said, the questions are wonderful. I said, that's a good guide. I said, the best thing to do is you ask your first question, and then you go from there based on what they say. I said, because, that way you're engaged, you're listening to what they're saying, and then you're following up based on what they tell you. I said, I even had a reporter one time, the person they interviewed said something really neat and unique, and I even asked them about it, and they had no idea that the person had said that because they were so busy worried about what their next question was
trying to be structured
that they weren't paying attention to what the answers were. I said, well, and a lot of times I said, you may ask one or two questions, and then you won't have to worry about the rest of them because you're just going with what they tell you. Right.
Having a good conversation.
Yes, exactly, which I said is the key to anything. I said, it's just like, the best ones are just like when you just meet somebody, on the street or something, you just start talking to them. basically, that's what you're trying to get from them. Mind the fact that there's a camera and all, you're just trying to just find out who they are and what they're about. And I said, and those are always the best things. I just like people.
Oh, yeah.
Which is odd because growing up, I was really shy growing up. And so most people who knew me growing up, I never would have thought I would have ended up being a broadcaster because I just didn't really talk with anybody. So how I ended up. But I tell people, though, I'm still relatively, as I continue to talk, relatively shy. But I said I have the advantage in that when I go somewhere, most of the time there are people there who know who I am. So it's not like you're just Frank Malloy, Macon guy who just walking into a room and no one knows who you are. I said it's a lot easier to start up a conversation when people at least have an idea, and so and a lot of them will start talking to you too. So that makes it a lot easier. So it may seem like I'm this just huge outgoing guy jumping right into the middle of everything, but
most of the time the ice is already broken.
Yes,
when you're in the room.
Exactly right. Thank you. I couldn't have said that better myself. Well, Laura, because Laura knows Laura. She knows more people than I do. Literally. Truly is and
not true.
Yeah, you do. I mean, and everyone, and they all love you. And Justin, you know tons of people.
Yeah,
Justin knows everything.
Yes, that's what I mean.
He probably knows more than me and you.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe one day.
See, those are the real treasures. Those are the people that it's just great, isn't it? It really is.
Good stuff. Well, you got anything else, Miss Laura?
I think that I've covered everything.
She's silently thinking, "Gosh, is he ever going to stop?" Please, no.
No, this was awesome.
Well, isn't it neat though? Because we started, it was cloudy, and then then all of a sudden,
nice
the sun
sunshine
popped on out. All of a sudden, shining on the three of us. So,
Yep.
Yes. Oh gosh,
Mr.
Cool
Frank,
to be here on Greyhound Field.
it is
Absolutely.
What a
With
neat
you.
it is. Oh,
Justin and
something a little different,
this has been wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
We appreciate you coming out.
Gosh, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Well, with anything, every time at the end of the podcast, we always like to remind people if you can do something good, you should do something good.
Yes, you should. Someone said you never know the good you'll do even if you just say a kind word to someone.
Absolutely.
Change somebody's day and sometimes even changes their life.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Thank you.
No rules when you come out my way. That's why my field stays packed on Fridays. We hunting, fishing, good living, just soaking up every country second we're giving.